Hello, welcome to fasboyRambles by Fastboy Creative. I'm Fastboy, and today I'm going to ramble on going through the ice. This is a storytelling episode, so different from the others in that I'm going to talk about an experience that I've had previously, and I'll actually tie it together at the end with a few key points, being preparedness, risk-taking, and perseverance. But anyway, it's really more of a just for fun episode. Okay, so let me give you the background. So it has to do with Fastboy going through the ice. Okay, let's see. I was about, I'm going to say maybe 28 years old, maybe at least late 20s. And it had been an extremely cold snap during the winter, upper Midwest. It was about minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe minus 25 Fahrenheit standard temperature. And with the wind chill, it was up as high as minus 70 Fahrenheit. So a group of friends and I decided that we were going to go out for a motorcycle ride on the river. So we would do this thing we called ice biking, and we had these pretty standard rigs set up to be used on the ice. And so at the time I was driving a Honda CR 125, and I had about 1,000 ice spikes in the back tire and maybe 750 or so in the front. Smallest sprocket I could fit on the back, largest sprocket I could fit in the front. Rejetted carburetor, run special fuel, all the things required to be able to do some good ice riding. And in this case, it was so cold out that we all rejetted the machines to be able to handle this, minus 25 standard temperature. So we get out to the river, and we get sort of assess the situation, and it was cold. And so we wanted to be sure that we really were all prepared. And there was probably 5 or 6 of us that had gotten together to go. And then as we began to ride, we ran into another maybe 5 or 6 that joined us, and we stayed together and rode. Well, from an experience standpoint, I can't speak for the whole crew, but at least myself and my fellow riders, we were all quite experienced. We'd been riding motorcycles for a long time, had done a lot of ice riding. We were wearing, good cold weather gear that was designed to be worn in those kind of temperatures. And on top of this, minus 70 wind chill factor, we were going to be running speeds of 100 plus miles an hour on the ice. So it was cold. Of course, we had helmets and goggles and face shields and, all the things that it took to really be able to enjoy the ride. So we set out onto the river to have the ride, got the machines warmed up, and of course the game was always to see who could ride the fastest and who could ride in front, who could get the bike down lowest to the ground around the turns, and ride with the front wheel off the ground as much as possible. And it was glare ice. It hadn't been much snow, but it had been a cold snap, so it was just ideal riding conditions. Well, one of the things that happens when it gets that cold out was there was no open water. The entire river was frozen. And you didn't need a ton of ice on top of the river as long as it was sitting on top of the water to be strong enough to ride these bikes. But needless to say, the entire river was all frozen over. There was no open areas. So we get out to ride, and we get a mile or two into the ride, and it's a lot of fun. You're this way, back and forth, both directions, laying the bike down as low to the ice as you can, and running the speeds as fast as you can run. And of course, because it's on the river, there are no speed limits. It's just open for the riding. And so a good friend of mine was in front of me. He was on a bigger bike. He was running a 250. I was running a 125. So I was struggling to get by him. So I really just kind of ran that second spot behind him. Well, we got up to one of the areas on the river where normally it was open water, and we would go off to the side and run the shoreline around the open water. But because it had been so cold out, there was no open water. Anyway, he's in front of me. He's probably at this point maybe, I'll say 15, 20 feet in front of me, and we're running 100 plus miles an hour, so we were cruising. Anyway, he starts to slow down a little bit because we're going to go across this patch that was previously open water. Well, as he starts to go, the ice just starts breaking and giving way, and he's able to, kind of gun it and just keep riding across these pieces as they're breaking away. And well, there I am, the next guy behind him, what to do. So I downshift, pull the front wheel up, and try and think I'm going to skip the water across the opening. Well, it ran that way for, probably 50 feet at least, where it just kept breaking away. So as I'm driving across these pieces of ice that are going away and skimming across the water because my tire's spinning so fast, the front end just starts coming down and down and down and down until all of a sudden the front wheel hits the water. Well, you can imagine what happened when the front wheel hit the water. Poof, it just sucked it right in. And so lucky for me, front wheel went underneath the ice, fender went over the top of the ice, and I flew off the motorcycle for a long ways, probably 50 or 60 feet down the river, and I curled up and rolled around on the ice. So all my experience, everything that I'd been through, all my ability to sort of assess on the fly and all that, kicked right in. So it's a good thing that I had the experience level that I had before the situation presented itself. Anyway, bike's caught in the hole, throttle stuck wide open, the tires spinning like mad, shooting water everywhere. And of course, it's minus 70 out, so the water's freezing as it's flying off the bike. And about the 10 or 12 or so of us that there were are all stopped trying to figure out what to do about it. Everybody's laying on the ice and sort of scooching their way out to the bike. And the water wasn't really deep there because it was like a rapids area. So ultimately, we were able to get to the bike, hit the kill switch, get the bike out, get it back onto the ice. Of course, I went to stand up and I couldn't hardly move. I couldn't see. I couldn't stand up. I couldn't do anything because I had a good 1/4 inch of ice across my goggles, over my helmet, around all my gear, and I was cuddled up in a ball. And so I had to kind of break myself free to be able to just be able to move again. And I had to pull my goggles off so that I could see again. I wasn't sure if I had water in my eyes or what it was. So it was quite an experience. Anyway, realized that I hadn't died and everybody else around me. So we had a good conversation with everybody around us, what happened and what we were going to do and how we were going to get back. Well, the throttle was frozen open and there was no way to get it to close. And we're 5-6 miles up. Actually, it was downriver from where we parked to get on the river. So we decided to get a couple guys to give me a bump start. So I put the bike in, I don't know, 2nd gear, 3rd gear, something like that. Got a bump start and took off and headed back towards the truck. Well, of course, it's a minus 70, no goggles, hurting the eyes like crazy, and can only drive 1 speed, and that's like screaming fast in 3rd gear. And anyway, we get back to the launch where we had gotten on. We have a little more conversation about it. Everybody's pretty shook up. Get all the bikes loaded back up. We go home, and I'm thinking to myself that this is it. This is too dangerous. I'm done. I'm never doing this again. And of course, I had a wife and 1 child for sure. I might have had the 2nd one by then, and everybody was just really concerned about what had happened. Well, anyway, let things thaw out. Got the bike cleaned up. Got everything working on it again, and again thinking I don't know if I'll ever do this again. And of course, the next morning, the one who was in front, my best buddy, calls me up and he says, "Hey, looks like the conditions are good again. You want to go out?" "Yeah, let's go out." So we were right back at it. Went out and had a good time. Well, anyway, to sort of summarize why I tell this story, it's like all the things that happen to you in your lifetime are all these experiences that you can draw on to become, the person who you are and the person maybe that you will become. It's just giving me goosebumps talking about this story because it was such a profound thing in my life in terms of how it affected me and how it caused me to think about the things that I do, whether it's in business and investing or interactions with family or whatever the case might be. But the thing that I pulled from it was, preparedness and how important that is. In this case, I had the right equipment. I was wearing the right gear. I had tons of riding experience, both on-road, off-road, and on the ice in slippery conditions, and just knew the things to do in this situation that things would go awry. Well, the next thing is to talk about the risk. Well, okay, how at risk was my situation? Well, the water in the whole river wasn't, necessarily that deep. I didn't go out there alone. I was riding with a group of people, all people that knew how to handle situations, extreme situations like this, because it is an extreme sport. So what was the risk? Well, the risk is I could have gone through the ice, got underneath it and drowned, I suppose. But being able to think on my feet as the risk situation was unfolding allowed me to be able to make decisions that made sense and keep control of in this case, the motorcycle, and make sure that I minimized, the risk of what was happening. And then the perseverance kind of comes in 2 different places. Was like to stick with the machine, apply the skill that I had, make total use of the performance of the machine that I had built to be able to get through this tough situation rather than, give up in the middle, right? And then just fall into the water and die or some other thing, right? And then, as we kind of circle back to the tail end of the story, right, thinking, okay, maybe I'll never do this again. Well, it's important to evaluate that, right? Because you need to know when it's time that enough is enough and it's time to bail out. And I was very close to that day. You can see it's getting me choked up, right? I was very close to that decision that day. And of course, when my friend called the next day and said, "Hey, you want to go out?" Perseverance kicked in. I said, "Yeah, I just love doing this too much. It's too much fun." And we just enjoy it so much that in this case, it was worth the risks. Something potentially terrible did happen, but we were able to have our instincts kick in, take care of the experience that we had, and have it end in as favorable of a situation as it could. So I guess the reason I tell this story is for you to think about that. Think about the things in your life that have happened and how these basic principles apply. And if things didn't go very favorable for you in those situations, well, what could have been done different? Did you learn something from it? Did you not learn something from it? Should you ever do it again? Should you ever do anything like it again? What did you determine about your risk threshold? For me, I was right there, right? Maybe I'll never ride again. But here we are, back to fasboy rambles. And so I rambled on my ice story and what a dangerous situation it was, but how all my training and preparedness and perseverance brought me through that situation. And the same can happen for you. So that's all Fastboy's got to say on this topic today. So Fastboy signing off. We'll see you the next time.